one of them an SNL star. The truly great Saturday Night Live. Every week we do a deep dive. Let's find out who are the greatest hosts, the ones that the fans love the most.
Yes, welcome on in, everybody, to the Saturday Night Network for another edition of our countdown of SNL's greatest hosts of all time. My name is John Schneider from the SNN. Very excited to be with you as we begin the home stretch. We're right near the top of the list to reveal some true legends of Saturday Night Live. And we are here, of course, as a presentation of latenighter.com and with some amazing guests on the panel and in the live chat this Monday night. So first up, let's bring in the co-captain of this countdown, and that is Bill Kenny. Bill, how are you?
John, I'm great. A little bit of a Sophie's choice this week. As you probably know, the two greatest hosts in the history of SNL, no spoilers, are doing their own thing on Twitter tonight. And they asked me to be over there to join them. But I said, no, I've got to be on the host countdown with John and the gang. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, good old Elon and Donald are doing a live interview on Twitter right now. So don't leave us.
Yeah, why do I feel like our discussion might be more interesting? I don't know. But yeah, we'll see.
A little bit.
Well, thank you for joining us if you're checking us out as well and not counter-programming. Well, here I am so excited to also bring in Rebecca North, who is somebody we have not talked to in a few months. And Rebecca, I miss you. I'm excited to have you back on the show tonight. So welcome on in.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. It's been such a long summer without you guys. But also, I must say, this new theme song is a banger. So
I knew you'd like it.
I'm really, really glad that I got a comment on that.
Yes, for sure. I knew you would like it. It's very much your style. But yeah, here for the countdown, pulling out all the stops as we count down these hosts. And I'm very excited to bring this guy in for the first time on the podcast. He is a sports writer for The Athletic, specifically for the LA Clippers. And that is Law Murray. Law, how are you?
I'm doing well. Really just excited to get to talk about SNL, man. Like, I've been watching the show since Will Ferrell's last season as a cast member.
Okay.
So this is to actually get a chance to talk about it, especially with the historic 50th season coming up. I'm geeked about it. So good to talk to you, John, Bill, and Rebecca.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so cool to get to talk to new people on the show who've been fans for so long, and know I get to see you on Twitter or X now. Sorry, Elon. But talking about all of your SNL takes and stuff like that. So you are still watching the show. You've been watching it for a few decades. Are you enjoying the current iteration of Saturday Night Live, everything we've gotten recently in season 49, and excited for 50?
I will say that going into anniversary seasons it's kind of almost kind of fraught with, okay, where is the state of the show right now? And I think the show's in a okay place, but it feels like the cast is a little crowded. I'm very eager to see if there will be new cast members, especially with Punky Johnson and Molly Kearney leaving. It also feels like, okay, is this going to finally be it for Keenan? Is this going to be finally going to be it for the Weekend Update desk? I'm really interested to see just to have an anniversary season and an election year, and we're coming off the Olympics. It feels like such a big crash of history. And wait, what is the show right now? So I'm excited, but I'm also anxious. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, that's why, I say it a lot, but it's the greatest time to be a fan of Saturday Night Live, because we really don't know what we're going to see in the special season. They could pull out all the stops, and then, of course, everything that's going to come after it. I mean, a lot of changes are expected. So I totally agree with you, Law. Rebecca, did you want to jump in on, we haven't heard from you in a few months. So Your thoughts on this anniversary season coming up?
I'm super, super stoked, of course. There's some really early Demois rumors. I don't know if you've addressed them here, but they seem really, I read a rumor, and I love it. And
all right, well, tell the rest of the class, what are the Demois rumors that are happening?
The Demois rumor for season 50, and again, rumors, do not credit us and hold us to it, but of course we have to share the breaking news. So it's saying Marcelo, Michael, Chloe, and Devin are all being promoted to regulars. Lorne
As
is
they say.
allegedly hiring 3 new featured players, one of whom has a commitment to Second City and will be joining in January. The premiere will be, which this seems like super feasible, this next like bit for the premiere would either be Glenn Powell or Nikki Glazer, but the musical guest is confirmed to be Chapel Rowan. I have some like Chapel friends working on her team, so I will confirm that and let you guys know, because that I can get that's the only thing I can actually
Go
confirm.
for it.
But
Yeah.
besides that, other hosts confirmed for the first half of the season, confirmed also from a like spoiler.
Yeah.
Dylan O'Brien, because of the SNL biopic, Natasha Lyonne, Kyle Mooney, and Simone Biles. Eddie Murphy is in negotiations to host the Christmas show, and Taylor Swift is in talks to be the musical guest. So, again, would be really sick. The fact, I get like geeked up every time SNL's on Demois anyway. So, like, to be reading like my favorite celebrity gossip site and also about SNL, like, it's the perfect combo. So,
Yeah, I'll just say, like, again, like, these are all rumors. So,
yeah,
like,
of course.
I do really, really pride myself in, like, not reporting anything unless it's actually happening. So, yeah, like, obviously, Demois has a huge following. So, like, naturally, people are talking about this. I think like some of these things, of course, like I'm hearing rumors about, but the fact that they mentioned that Chloe Trost would be promoted, I think starts to poke a hole in the boat a little bit, because again, Chloe's only been on for a year, so it would be the first time in a long time they would do something like that. Doesn't really make sense here. So yeah, there could be partial truths there. Typically this time of year, at the beginning of August, is the time when they are auditioning and doing showcases for new cast members. They're also starting to reach out for hosts. I think it's a little early for all of this confirmed information for me to buy it, is what I'll say. I know there was a rumor last week about a certain some people were reporting that there was a new cast member hired. I could tell you that I don't think that is anything legit at this point. The showcases that they do, especially where they film people coming into age, like that type of stuff, will happen closer to the start of September than it will at the beginning of August. So again, I know we're in like the territory right now where we're less than 50 days to the new season. Everyone's very amped up and wants to be the first person to report the news. Law, I know you can relate to this in basketball. Like everybody just wants to be out there, and whether you're like Shams or Woj or whatever, you just want to be able to like be the first one to report actual news. But I think we're still a little bit too far out to say that anything here is for sure.
Also, I don't think this is true, because Bowen was on Watch What Happens Live last night, like Andy Cohen's show, and they were talking about who will play Tim Waltz, and he was like, "Oh, I really think like Steve Martin would be great on this." They don't know anything, so clearly people haven't like been done. Like they clearly have no clue, considering like there were other articles that Steve said, "I don't want to," and Bowen's like, "Wait, that's a great idea." So like they don't know anything, but like fun to read the rumors, of course.
For sure, no problem reading the rumors. Law, what were you gonna say?
I was going to say, this is the schedule release week for the NBA. So it's almost feels like that for SNL too. It's like, who's going to actually be doing all these shows? I want to know how many shows they're actually going to do. I mean, if it's going to be the standard 20, or they try and do a little bit more. We already got the anniversary show that I just hope is a little bit more tighter put together than the one from 2015. But yeah, anything y'all like, Rebecca already got me kind of hype. I'm trying to calm that down. We got a month and a half.
Yeah, we still got I guess like 6.5 weeks to go. I do know that the intention is to do 10 shows in the fall. I'm not going to put that on social media. If you guys want to do that, go for it. But I that's what I've heard, that there's supposed to be 10 shows in the fall. I think we're looking at like a 4-3-3 start to the fall, which would be the most shows in the fall in a very long time. So they're definitely front loading this thing, probably to give themselves more breaks around the anniversary shows in February. So that's, as far as schedule release is concerned, I think that's what we're looking at here. And again, as soon as we have something that's like a little bit more legit, it's probably we're looking 2 or 3 more weeks until we actually get some real information here. We'll obviously be talking about it all here on the podcast, whether it's on the countdown or as we start to ramp up our season 50 coverage. And as we get after Labor Day, we'll definitely have more shows as we start to just build this thing bigger and bigger. Okay. So that's what's happening in the SNL world. Let's check back into the greatest host countdown over here. And we'll start by bringing up the list that we have so far. So we have a lot of names that we've talked about every single week here on the countdown. And I'm going to go through them and I'm going to get Rebecca and Law's thoughts on the list so far. So here we go. Host rankings so far from 50 through 19. So up from 50, we got Danny DeVito, then John Lithgow, Anne Hathaway, Jack Black, Dana Carvey, Paul Simon, Louis C.K., Lily Tomlin, Jimmy Fallon, and Charles Barkley. Up from 40, we got Eric Idle, Amy Poehler, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Josh Brolin, Conan O'Brien, Peyton Manning, Bill Murray, Richard Pryor, Zach Galifianakis, and Drew Barrymore. Up from 30, we got Larry David, Dwayne Johnson, Maya Rudolph, Pedro Pascal, Elliot Gould, Jim Carrey, Dave Chappelle, Lindsay Lohan, Paul Rudd, and Candice Bergen was the first name we revealed last week. And then into the top 20, we got 2 names so far, and that is Will Ferrell and Martin Short. So, Rebecca, let's start with you. What do you think about the list? How have the listeners done with our rankings so far?
I think the list is good. It's definitely diverse with some comedians, definitely with some people that are not in the space, some returning cast members as hosts. I think it's been pretty diverse. I feel like the biggest one that could have gone completely either way was Dave Chappelle. Like, for me, that could have been in like the top, or it could have been like completely off the list. It depends like how the listeners were feeling about him on that certain day. But that was when I was shocked. And I also feel like the 2 others that I was like very happy seeing was Lindsay Lohan on 23. Like, I love that episode from just like being a pop culture geek, but like, I'm glad to know the listeners agree, because like, I don't think that is like widely regarded as like one of the best hosts. So I was really excited to see that. Then the other one I'm a little shocked is Peyton Manning at 35. Maybe it's because I just like love that one, but I kind of feel like that should be higher up. I feel like, John, you like that one too. So 35 is a little, so it's a little low for me. But besides this, I feel like there's a lot of good names, people that I was like, obviously have to be in top 50, and people like completely forgot even hosted, but like reminded me in a good way. So I think everyone's done pretty well.
Absolutely. Law, how do you feel about this list? It's our first time getting to hear your opinion on everything. Here, Law, you're muted. Just make sure you unmute yourself so we got you.
There you go. So I would agree with Rebecca, like as far as like the diversity on the list. I'm actually surprised that there are some hosts that are as high as they are, to be honest. Like I love that Peyton Manning's on it. I'm shocked that he is, out of everybody who has hosted, especially most of the times, that he's like actually 35, because he's only hosted what, I think just the one time, right?
Yep.
And
we have 4 that are one-timers on this list.
Yeah. I think for a one-time host, it's a credit to Peyton. I remember that episode pretty well. That was what, 06, 07, I believe, right after they won that Super Bowl. But I'm definitely surprised that he is as high just on the strength of the one episode. Like, obviously that one episode was great.
John loves it. So I feel like myself and the listeners have that kind of in our ears to be swayed a little bit, just of how excited John
I'm influencing the list.
1,000% you are.
I don't know if I have that power. Law, what do you think about where Barkley landed at 41 on this list?
Man, that's the thing. It's like I would have definitely had Barkley over Peyton, just because it's rare to have an athlete host that many times and be good and to keep coming back. And I know the last 3 times Charles hosted was more, people see him more as a broadcaster, more as a regular TV presence. But you know what? Peyton is going to get to that point. I really wonder, especially after this Olympics, I wonder if Peyton winds up hosting more, or maybe as soon as, season 50. But I thought Charles is cool that he cracked the top 50. I thought he'd be a little bit higher, just because it's rare to get an athlete to host that many times. But it's definitely cool that he made it, for sure.
Bill, we're now talking about some of the elites of the elite. So how are you feeling about how the list is shaping up as we head into our final 6 weeks of breaking this whole thing down?
Yeah, I think we're in a good place. Doing the mental math in my head every week to try to figure out who's left. And we have one tonight that I'm shocked has gotten as high as they did. But overall, I think pretty well. Again, going all the way back to the original era, having people like Eric Idle, Candice Bergen, people who haven't been on the show for a very long time. It's good to see everything kind of covered from 75 through today. And I think it's going to get even dicier as we go higher here. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
All right, that's a good transition point. Let's start with number 18 that we have revealing here tonight. And we're going to do 3 more reveals throughout the show. So this is a host I'm very excited to talk about, part of the SNL family, and has hosted not just 5 times, but actually 6 times. So we're going into some of the people who have hosted the show the most, has some wonderful moments over the last 20 years of Saturday Night Live. And that is number 18. Scarlett Johansson comes in here. We've been thinking about where she was going to end up on this list. She starts her career hosting the show at very young, in season 31 in 2006 with musical guest Death Cab for Cutie. That ages me a little bit. But season 32 the following year in 2007 comes right back. People were so pumped about her first episode, so they bring her back 1 year later with musical guest Bjork. Then we head over to a few years later with Arcade Fire in season 36. And that would be in 2010. Then starts to come back every few years. Basically, after that, we got season 40, episode 19 with Wiz Khalifa in 2015, season 42 in 2017 with Lord, and season 45, episode 9 in 2019 with Niall Horan. That was the last time we've seen her host the show. Naturally, she's appeared on the show many times, 7 guest appearances. She's given out jackets. She just appeared to do a State of the Union moment in this last season. And obviously, her connection to Colin Jost makes her very much a part of the SNL fabric. So let's dive into overall thoughts on Scarlett Johansson, where she ended up on this list. Rebecca, I'm going to start with you on this one. I want to get your thoughts. How are you feeling about ScarJo here at 18?
I think this is good. This is the one that of the list that was like, okay, like shocked she made it this high. I feel like her most recent State of the Union appearance like solidified her, as if the 5-timers didn't, but solidified her as like, oh, wait, you're really good at this. And you can make it just a good cameo and be the best part of that episode for me that night that she did that. So could be that kind of kept people in the back of her mind. I mean, she's great. Her connection to Colin Jost, of course, is something that definitely holds a spot in my heart. So I'm happy to see her higher up, and just all around, I just kind of I like what she does. I like that she's always in new movies, as they talk about on Make an Update, the joke swaps, but she's always in new movies. So she's always something to promote. So I think it's a pretty solid, like her name comes on and I'm comfortable. I'm not, I'm sitting on the edge of my seat, what she's going to do groundbreaking, but I'm like comfortable. She'll be funny. They know what to do with her at this point. They know her comedy styling. So I was happy to see her on this list. A little shocked that she is on 18, but again, I was happy she made the top 50, of course.
Bill, how are you feeling about Scarlett Johansson and where she ended up over here?
Yeah, I think she should have been a little bit higher, to be honest. We've talked week after week of, especially with people who've come back 4, 5, 6 times, almost to diminishing returns almost every single time. I don't think that's the case with ScarJo. I think season 45 is one of her best episodes overall, top to bottom. The fact that she's come back for almost 18 years now, and there's not really a dud episode in the bunch. There are dud sketches. I see somebody in the chat already mentioned St. Cat's Middle School, which is not her fault, but the whole Keenan reacts at its
I love that
absolute
sketch. I'm just going to say
apex.
it, but
Oh my goodness. but that's not her fault, and it's kind of just one of those things where most of the stuff is really, really good. She could have gone the way of a Lindsay Lohan or an Anne Hathaway, where she had her moment as, one of the hottest actresses on the planet and just kind of stopped coming to the show. That wasn't the case. And I don't know if that's completely Josh related or if it's that, she is still super hot in the pop culture. She's part of Marvel. She's doing other things. So I like this placement. I think she should have been just a tad bit higher for me, though.
Interesting. All right, Law, let's get your opinion here on Scarlett Johansson as a host and where she ended up at 18 on the list.
Yeah, I think that on first glance, it is surprising that she cracked the top 20, but her versatility is exceptional. We're talking 6 episodes over the course of 15 seasons. You literally see her mature another step, because it's already when she first hosted, it's okay, It's not like her child, you know, growing up or being a teenage actor. It's like her first time hosting. I think Match Point was out. You know, that's a tough movie to be trying to have out and then do SNL, right? And so just to see her grow as a woman, as a performer through these 6 episodes is really cool. There's not a lot of, you know, 5-time hosts like Scarlett, who like they kind of just blend in with all the cast that she's gotten to work with as well. And so I think that's a credit to her. The fact that even in her episodes, like she's not overwhelming. Like there's not a part of her where it's like she has this huge ego and it dominates the show. Like she looks like someone who enjoys being there, who can work with anybody. And I think that makes a great host. I do feel like I'm not sure how that would have worked in like previous eras of the show, but I don't think that that's what this list is about. It's like what you work with, she's gotten to work with. I will say it's been 5 years since she's hosted, and I wonder if they feel like, okay, Scarlett, do you want to do this again, or is this going to be it? The last thing I'll say, I think Scarlett's like to the 21st century with Susan St. James is to the early 80s. Like I'm going to be on SNL and find my partner for life. I feel like that's been pretty cool to watch.
Yeah, that is cool. That's very funny. I think, you know, I don't know if this is like a really hot take or not, but I think there's an argument to be made that Scarlett Johansson is the greatest woman to ever host SNL. You know, I know that, you know, the host, what Rebecca, you're looking at me like I'm crazy.
Are you kidding? I can't tell.
Well,
Like you
no,
think
I'm
she's
not.
the greatest?
I
I
think there's an
really couldn't
argument.
even off the top of my. Again, there's an argument to anything, I guess. Then if you want to say that, but like
No,
I'm shocked. Like I couldn't think of one sketch off the top of my head that I was like, oh wait, yes, that's the one like I love. Like she's a good player. She blends in with the cast, but she's doesn't do as much of a standalone performance that's as memorable to me. So maybe that's it. It depends what your thing is. Do you want the host to be able to be part of the cast, or do you want to be like,
so
wait,
perfectly.
She does, but sometimes maybe for me to be that high up, I'm like, no one else could do what you're doing. So that's how I determine someone great. And I feel like other people could do majority of the sketches and things she's done on the show.
I do think it's interesting. Real quick, I just think it's interesting that like I don't think she's ever really hosted a marquee kind of episode. You know, like
Right.
when you look at like when she hosts, it's like she's the setup to a Christmas show or the setup to a Thanksgiving show. It's not like she's opened the season or closed the season. So I feel like she's a good host to be like, all right, we need somebody.
Right. And I totally get that. I don't know that we could. I mean, some of her hosts, like the season 45 one, and to me, what was like trending into a pretty rough time at SNL, or already going through a pretty rough time at SNL. I think her season 45 one is really fantastic. When she comes in season 31 and season 32, you look at her as like, whoa, this is an unbelievable hosting prospect. She blends in so well with the cast, like really, really finds her way in those episodes. And I think that, you know, with the amount of time she's hosted, maybe the knock on her not being the greatest woman to host the show is that she doesn't have this episode that's going to be known as one of the greatest episodes of all time. And you could probably talk about that with some of the other women who have hosted, who you can make that argument for. And it's really hard to have this discussion when we haven't revealed the 17 that are ahead of her to be able to compare to some of the people there. And I'm only putting the caveat as woman on there because, you know, SNL's hosting list in terms of quantity has certainly been dominated by men over the years who have, you know, there's a few men who've hosted 10 times. So it's hard to talk about, you know, somebody hosted 10 versus somebody hosted 6 and someone who spans those generations. But to me, like, I believe that Scarlett Johansson is underrated as a host because one, she's beautiful and is one of the most beautiful women in the world. And that's, you know, like, again, it's hard to, you know, she gets put in a box, basically. She comes in very young, and people don't want to give credit to people who are so young who do so well on the show. It's very easy to come in with the, you know, somebody who's experienced and 40 or something like that and be like, wow, they're an amazing host and they can host a bunch of times. Like when you start coming in when you're so young, I just think, you know, it's harder to do that. And I do think that now that she's married to Colin Jost, people don't necessarily associate her, fair or not, now with being such a great host. So for me, like, I'm not saying she is the greatest woman to host the show. I think there's an argument that she's in the Mount Rushmore for sure, and a good one of the greatest women to host the show. So let's get into her moments in just a moment. But Bill, do you want to wrap up that discussion overall on Scarlett Johansson?
Yeah, John, we haven't always agreed on everything on this countdown, but I'm completely with you on this. If she's not the greatest female host of all time, she's in the Mount Rushmore for sure. And it is quality and over quantity. So you've got Candice Bergen, who we just spoke about, and she has these 3 incredible episodes, these 3 episodes that are just remembered by SNL fans throughout the generations. And then she has these 2 duds and then just doesn't come back other than a couple of 5-timer sketches. But you have Scarlett here through 18 years pretty consistently, and there's not a bad episode in the bunch. And I think that's kind of the important part. Yes, there is not one episode that you're going to put in the greatest episodes of all time, but there's not one that you go, oh, I can't believe she came back to do this for a 6th time. Like, look at how bad this is. So there is definitely an argument to be made. There are a couple others, obviously, that are going to come up later. But yeah, I think for sure she's up there.
Yeah, and I would say, like, if you're going to Vegas right now and you're putting money down on the first woman to host the show 10 times, I think you got to put your money potentially on Scarlett Johansson. At 39 years old, being ingrained in the family, like I said, she could build and stack this resume even further. If this, SNL goes on and we do this countdown, in the 75th year of the show, like, there's a chance that Scarlett Johansson's gets in the top 5. Like, it could happen. So I'm just saying, a lot of potential here to talk about. But let's talk about what the resume has been so far through these 6 episodes. And I want to talk through some of these moments that, if you haven't gone back and watched these Scarlett Johansson episodes, what are some essential things you need to know about Scarlett's time at the show? So Rebecca, give us a couple of moments for you that are great Scarlett Johansson moments.
Yeah, so the number one that when I was thinking, okay, like Scarlett Johansson, the first sketch that comes to my mind, and really the only that was just like jumping out, which I guess goes back to like what you were saying, like, yeah, all episodes are solid, but there's not one that's like the best ever. I think her I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus was the one that came right into my brain. Like, when I picture her on SNL, besides her as like Katie Bright, I see her that's like a recent thing. I see her in the I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus sketch. It's a little unsettling. I really liked it. It's really funny to me, and it didn't need that much, if that makes sense. Like, it's not that crazy of a premise, but I really think it's my favorite Scarlett Johansson sketch that I've ever seen her do.
Yeah, and it has the all-time Mikey Cuck moment that we always reference back to. So, but yeah, from that season 45 episode that a lot of people in the chat are talking about potentially being her best episode, 6 episodes into her career hosting the show. Law, what about you? What about some other moments from her career that you want to talk about?
I just love the skits with mics, either the chandeliers or the busts, right? Like, first of all, anytime you get something recurring, when you have a chain, it just really helps you be like, okay, yeah, we got to bring you back. And she did get that. Like, she's very much like, her first episode, they had a chandelier sketch, but they also had another sketch, like Once in a Lifetime Jewelers or whatever, with Jason being one of his crazy characters. And it just was like, okay, Scarlett's going to be around money, some things that people like to have for themselves, jewelry, things that make you look and feel good. So I felt like them bringing that back as many times they did, obviously that tailed off, I feel like, basically ever since Fred left the show. Obviously that's going to affect carrying that kind of a sketch, but I loved looking at those sketches and looking back at those sketches in terms of what she was able to get recurring her first few times hosting.
Yeah, those sketches are so great. And I do think that we don't talk about them enough. I mean, I think if you look back, most people remember them as being like a Fred Armisen sketch. But I think Scarlett Johansson, when I saw her in those, really was like, it hit me how much she could have been a cast member. just because
Yeah.
she carries the sketch between, like, it's almost like Fred Armisen does the chorus of those sketches, but she does the verses. Like, she basically carries us from point A to point B throughout that sketch. And just the look at this one, look at that one, and you got to get yourself some marble columns. To me, in season 32 was my favorite of those. But yeah, Bill, I mean, it was the first time when I saw her in those that I really felt like, oh, she's got it.
Yeah, it was kind of like that Timberlake moment when first time he hosted, where you got that feeling like, oh, she's going to be around a while. And I found out this week as I was rewatching these episodes that my 14-year-old daughter told me that this is a TikTok trend with, look at this one, look at that one. So
Oh, really?
it's continued into another generation here, and you don't even have to be watching the show. She didn't even know it was from SNL, so it's pretty funny. But yeah, so as far as some of the ones that I want to talk about, I mean, you got to talk about Duluth Live, right? This is a forte moment for the ages, where it's a morning talk show and they've written a new theme song, and she's part of the band, and the song just goes on forever. And this is in her first episode in season 31. So that's one of them. And same episode as Chandelier. But what else? I mean, Virgin Flight with Vanessa. I think they're the bionic flight attendants, and they've been programmed incorrectly, and they just keep answering the questions and throwing towels at people. They think it's Halloween, even though it's the middle of the summer. So there's a lot of fun physical comedy in that one, and we get to see Vanessa in one of her better roles too. And Olive Garden, I mean, a lot of fun with that, and that's in her season 42 episode, where Beck is directing, Leslie, Keenan, and Scarlett, and now I'm forgetting who else is in it, but yeah, I can't think of it. But basically they keep doing more and more weird and wacky stuff to film this Olive Garden. Keenan's got his face in the pasta. Beck's making racial overtones to Leslie. Like, there's a lot of weird stuff going on here, where it ends up where Leslie and ScarJo are kissing at the end. So another physical sketch that we got to see her in.
Yeah, also another one on the same mindset of, like, again, maybe it's not her sketch, but she really keeps up with the cast in the way that she could be one of the cast members. But I thought Mommy's Kissing Santa Claus for me was like, that was her sketch, and that she did that. But another one where she played just a really great, just like, player in the sketch is the Shed the Mermaid. It was definitely a Kate McKinnon driven, where it's all these gorgeous mermaids and they're trying to figure out, like, which is the one that's going to, like, get the Bachelor, and Kate McKinnon is like a blowfish or one of those, like, really deformed, like, ugly, like, mermaid fish things. And I think this one is just a classic Kate in the way that she can do one of those things. It's in the line of a host right in last season, and we were like, wow, they kept up so well with Sarah Sherman. Like, as she's doing this insane, outrageous thing, the host is not breaking. They're being really into it and just acting like they've been on the show every single episode. So I think that's one that she definitely stands out from her episodes. And that was the season 42 one also.
Yeah, and it reminds me a lot about how well, she works with Kate McKinnon. She works really well with Kristen Wiig as well. We get to see her in season 32 doing Kristen Wiig's Michelle Dyson character, the one, the interviewer that keeps hitting on the people she's interviewing. And, she works really well with her. She does a Cueto sketch with Andy Samberg. And also we talked about her work with Fred Armisen. Like, her versatility to work with different types of cast members is extremely impressive. But I do really feel like she is one of those hosts that really works well with women, like, on the show, like, champions them, like, builds them up, works with them, and does their sketches. And I think that's really huge, because it is more rare compared to the men who have hosted the show. And that brings me to a sketch that I think would be important to talk about. And that is in her season 42 episode, a sketch for the women. And this was a really interesting, like, a really unique sketch that I thought was really interesting. That was almost fourth wall breaking, where Scarlett Johansson talks about how, it was a special day for women that week, and that all the women writers and the women in the cast got the day off. So Beck and Kyle decided to do something nice for the women and write a sketch that was just for them. And it basically, like, takes place in, like, a restaurant where they're sitting around a table. And the whole thing is that the lines were supposedly written by Beck and Kyle, and they're talking about how important it is for women and women's rights and all stuff. But Beck and Kyle just, like, keep interrupting them and not letting them talk. And, like, it was like there were so many layers of points to that sketch that I feel like worked so well, and really like work only with Scarlett Johansson as a host, because she's able to like not take it in a direction where you don't find it funny. So for me, I think like that is one of the standout moments that we don't talk about enough about Scarlett Johansson. So that one I think is really good. I would also be remiss if we didn't talk about her role as Ivanka Trump, because I think like whenever all is said and done with her career, she will be remembered for playing that role during the Trump administration. She does, I believe, yeah, so she does host twice during those years. We have the complicit ad on here, which a lot of people remember as being a great sketch and a great Ivanka moment. So Rebecca, do you want to jump in on that impression?
I have two impressions that stood out for her in sketches, and that was the number one. I think if there were to ever be a sketch where someone's playing Ivanka again, no one really does it as well as Scarlett did, in my mind. And they kept using the C word, which, use your imagination, what they were probably implying, but it was complicit. And I think that that was so great. And I think it used kind of, as you said before, like her beauty to as like a weapon in a way. It just had to be really good. And you have the aspect that you're like also stunningly gorgeous. So I think that was great. Another one that like just like brings me joy, which maybe it's because I'm a Bravo girl and like I love reality TV, but she does the Millionaire Matchmaker as Patty Stanger. Again, I don't know if it's the best Patty Stanger impression I've ever seen. It's probably the only one I've ever seen though. So in my mind, it's the best. And I just like this one that she is able to morph herself into these characters pretty well.
Yeah, she does have like a running theme of some of her episodes of doing like MTV shows. I think she does My Super Sweet 16 or like a
Yeah.
pregnancy like ones as well. And like I don't know what the deal is with that, but for some reason she really fits well into like the MTV vibe, even though she's not like an MTV
She might
kid.
just like the shows. Like I don't know
Yeah.
what like her taste in TV is, but maybe like I don't know, the more you watch it, the better you're gonna do it. Being able to play
Yeah.
a certain type of person.
For definitely. And look, I think for somebody who's clearly so successful and has so much going for them, the ability to like make fun of yourself really hits well with the SNL audience. So Law, to like see her doing, playing Black Widow, like at the height of the MCU and making fun of her character that she's become like really well known for at the time. I think that stuff really resonated her and made it easier to root for her as a host. So do you want to talk about that and anything else you have on Scarlett?
I mean, shoot, man. The fifth time she hosted, Ghost in the Shell was out, and I don't know if y'all remember, but there's a lot of controversy around that film and the casting of that. So when I saw that skit that y'all were talking about, the women writer sketch, it's like that sketch was done while the controversy of Ghost in the Shell was out about like casting based off of nationality, based off of a white woman playing a role that seemingly was earmarked for a Japanese woman, right? And so to me, that was one of the meta parts of like how Scarlett, one, can take a joke, but two, is like aware of just how to blend in to what a show is doing. The monologue of that show, because it was her fifth time, like she said, Kenan Thompson was put together a clip show of her highlights, and of course, all the highlights wind up being shit that Kenan was doing. So, I just feel like she's just really versatile, really aware of herself, not taking herself too seriously. All the things that make a perfect host, all the things that keep Bowen Yang happy, and doesn't have Bowen screaming at you at the end of the week. So I noticed all those things, and then shout out to Lord. Like, I know we're not talking about musical guests, but like I love that sketch for women just because Laura comes in and Laura can't even sing her own damn song on that sketch. So
Yeah,
All her
it's just so
musical guests have
inclusive,
been pretty elite though. Like she's had good musical guests from her like first one being Death Cab for Cutie, then Bjork, Arcade Fire, who we know comes back on SNL, Wiz Khalifa, Lord, and Niall Horan. I feel like they sometimes when you have a not a stunt, but like kind of like host, you're not sure the musical guest is always up to par. But I feel like for her, they've always kind of balanced it with a pretty strong musical guest. So I think that is a testament to how they feel about Scarlett Johansson being on the show.
Yeah, and like Bill, I know we tend to lean positive on the show. I get that, but I don't. I sort of like just like don't see the negative side of Scarlett Johansson to me. Like I think that she really checks all the boxes of everything you would look for in an SNL host. So for you, do you want to give your final summary or any other moments that you think we should talk about while we're in this Scarlett Johansson moment?
Well, I mean, let's bring up one or two more here. I think the hot
Okay.
tub Christmas in season 45 with Cecily, where they're singing in the hot tub. They died there in the 70s, and they they were strippers down the road, and they're trying to give warnings to Ego and Chris Red, and yeah, I mean, Deep House Dish. No, I'm just kidding. No, we're not going to talk about Deep House Dish.
Oui.
Hollywood Dish, though, we do get
Oh
in
yeah, I wanted to mention with
season
Rebecca here. I wanted to mention
36
that she
with
was in
Rebecca.
Hollywood.
Yeah, got to bring that up.
I know I should have made that my sketch to talk about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look, this is just one of these people who you're never. Most people I don't are going to be upset if she's announced as a host. Again, not a bad one in the bunch. Been doing it a long time, and just is so game to do anything. Some of the stuff that's been mentioned here, where she's not looking like the pretty girl, she's not looking like the diva or the Hollywood starlet. She just throws herself into it for the comedy, and that's what you want out of an SNL host. So hope to see her this season, and I think we
Yeah.
will.
Definitely. Let's talk through some criteria that we look at when evaluating these hosts. And like I said, she checks a lot of boxes. So for me, the things that I'm looking at when I'm evaluating is in another life, in another universe, could you have been a cast member? To me, no doubt, Scarlett Johansson, if she had taken another path, like could have been an SNL cast member and could have been one of the all-time great SNL cast members. I think she has that flexibility. She can do characters. She could do voices. I mean, all you have to do is go watch her do Katie Britt earlier this year. And you're like, wow, like that was just everyone, whether you were on the left or the right, came together and was like, let's make fun of this woman and let's have Scarlett Johansson do it. And I think like it goes to show you that she could be a really, really wonderful cast member in another universe. Does she have a defining characteristic that she brings to the show? I think just like her malleability, her, you know, that to me stands out. Obviously, like how good looking she is, I think is part of her brand, but the fact that she doesn't make it a part of her humor, I think really works for her a lot. So do you have any other like characteristics you would describe her brand as, Bill?
Not really. I mean, I think you pretty much covered it. That's basically, you know,
Yeah.
being able to do whatever is asked of her. I don't know that that's a brand per se, but certainly something that we can look for her every time.
Sure. I think she checks that box, but I do think that probably other people who have hosted the show who are ahead of her on this list might have stronger brands in terms of like their archetypes. And that may be why she never gets to the top of this list. But that is like something to consider about when we're talking about that criteria. Can you work with multiple casts? So we've seen her over a period, hosting over a period of, I guess, 13 years, even came back up until, you know, this season. So for me, can she work with multiple casts? Absolutely. Can she work with different types of cast members? 100%. From an analytics perspective, her analytics are really good. Hosted the show 6 times, 59 sketches, does impressions, has a couple of recurring characters, has said live from New York a few times, guest appearances as Ivanka, as Katie Britt, and then her SPE for modern times, definitely above average, 8.67. So during her 6 times hosting the show, she's in, you know, 8 2/3 sketches per episode. That is a fantastic number. It really means that they use her all over the show. She's never left out of any of her episodes. So I'm feeling really good about her from an analytics perspective. And from a legacy perspective, again, I don't think you could talk about the greatest woman to host a show without putting her in that conversation. So overall, for me, I'm feeling really good about Scarlett Johansson here at this place. Could have been even higher on the list. Rebecca, let's get your final thoughts on Scarlett Johansson at 18.
I'm not a hater. Like, I do love Scarlett Johansson, but she is not in my Mount Rushmore of a women host. I think 18, in my opinion, was a little generous because there wasn't anything like overtly memorable. And my criteria is like, who do I remember? Which episodes am I going to go back and rewatch? And she does not fit that criteria for me. She can definitely fit in with the cast and could have been a cast member. I think is a little bit generous as well to say, like, I don't know if she's like the comedy chops to be a cast member, but I think she definitely solid, like top 25 for me. But like, and I love seeing her again. If she is casted, to host, I'm not gonna be upset about it, but she's not someone that I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna go out this Saturday night because I have to watch this live right away. So maybe that's my criteria, but I mean, I love Scarlett Johansson. I love a girl with a raspy voice, so I'm not complaining too much here. But yeah, and I don't mean to be a hater here, but
No, that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. Law, let's get your final thoughts on Scarlett Johansson here at 18.
Yeah, I think it's high. Just because I don't feel like there's like that one thing that she does that stands out like by itself. I don't think she can quote unquote carry a show. And so like shit, you're getting to your top 20. That means that if you got a standard season and you're like, we're gonna get the best host, period, that means she's on it. And that might be a little lofty, but I mean, you got to give a lot of credit to her versatility, her teamwork, her ability to just, be present with so many different groups of people, do so many things. We didn't even touch on how she carried, I will say, in terms of carriage. I mean, her and Beck Bennett, with Beck Bennett voicing a whole dog on a couple of those shows, like she was able to do that too. So, I mean, she's fun. She's fun, and clearly the cast likes her, and that's a credit to her. And now another credit to her, she's top 20 on this damn list.
Yes, definitely. And I will say, yes, if I am putting together for season 50 the greatest host in the history of the show to host, she would host one of those episodes for me. Bill, your final thoughts on Scarlett here at 18?
Yeah, one of the all-time greats. It's not necessarily her fault that there's not a Criterion collection episode here, as the Lonely Island Boys like to say. That could be partially because of the writing. I don't think that there's anything that she isn't able to do on the show. And I think that she should be even a little bit higher than she is right now. And somebody who we would definitely have on the list of season 50, no matter what.
All right, there you go. Scarlett Johansson at 18. Let's move up one slot and talk about who we have here at number 17. This should be a fun one. This is a SNL host that everyone could not stop talking about this year. Somebody who had a very, very viral moment on the show and has some memorable moments in his 3 times hosting Saturday Night Live. And that would be at number 17. Ryan Gosling. Here we go. I know a lot of people in the chat have been saying, when is this guy going to pop up on our screen? Makes it all the way up here to number 17. I wonder why, but we'll get into it. Here, season 41, episode 7 with musical guest Leon Bridges comes out. Obviously, one of the biggest movie stars in the world, has some big, big moments on the show in season 41. They bring him back for the premiere a couple years later with musical guest Jay-Z, season 43, episode 1 in 2017. And then he does return 6 years later in season 49, episode 17, an episode that we recently covered here on the podcast with musical guest Chris Stapleton, in an episode that had one of the biggest moments in modern SNL history with Beavis and Butthead. So clearly that must have had some play in getting him higher up this list, but does he deserve this spot? Bill, I know you're chomping at the bit to talk about it, so I'm going to let you go first here.
Well, John, let me just we're fond of lists here, so let me give you a couple of names that are most likely not going to be coming up in the next 6 weeks that hosted at least 3 times. Michael Palin, John Malkovich, Howard Hessman, Madeline Kahn, Robin Williams. They are all better than Ryan Gosling. Sorry, this is such recency bias. We talked about it.
Better, not greater, though.
No, I don't agree with that.
Okay.
But yeah, I this is all on the wave of, as you said, one of the greatest sketches in modern SNL times. No, but that does not make a great host. That does not make a great episode. That does not make an all-time top 17 SNL host out of 651 hosts. So I like Gosling. I think he breaks a little bit too much, maybe. But there's no way he's on this list if he hadn't hosted 4 or 5 months ago. Not only because he had only done it twice, but because, again, of that viral moment that overtook even non-SNL watchers. So wouldn't even crack my top 50, to be honest with you. He'd be on that cusp. So to see him this high is a little crazy.
Law, what do you think about all this with Gosling ending up here at 17?
Yeah, I'm shocked that he's in it. I like Ryan Gosling. Like I didn't watch a single Ryan Gosling movie before he hosted the first time. I'm not ashamed to admit that. I did watch an Are You Afraid of the Dark episode where he was with Gilbert Godfrey, rest in peace. Like I did watch that back in the day growing up. And I ain't watched The Notebook. I still haven't watched The Notebook. I ain't been with nobody that made me watch The Notebook. So I needed these episodes to be familiar with him. And I will say him hosting SNL makes me like him more than if I didn't know, the stuff that he was doing as a regular film actor. But yeah, it's like, and I don't know the list after this. Obviously, I'm shocked that he's top 20 though. I had fun watching his episodes, but I feel like that was the most break energy from a non Jimmy Fallon host or cast member that I've seen in a long time, as well. And again, it makes me endear me to Ryan Gosling, but I'm not sure I would have ever considered him to be part of a countdown this high. But he also has some formulaic episodes, which again I think is pretty fun. I'm sure we'll get to some of that discussing him. He's a good host. He's a fun host. Top 20. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that.
Rebecca, what do you think? Do you agree with Bill and Law here? Or are you feeling differently?
Don't think I feel as strongly as they both do. I think I definitely see him in top 30 for sure. Yes, there's a recency bias to a lot of this, but in the sketches that popped out to my brain from Ryan, only one was from the most recent episode. So I don't think that that's like ultimate like recency bias. Yeah, I mean, realistically, you say that and all of his episodes are season 41 or more recent. So realistically, yeah, it's recent. So like, yes, although I only knew one of the hosts you mentioned, Bill, and I'm on all these countdown, all of these types of episodes here on the SNN. Like, I only know who Robin Williams was. So I don't think any of those people maybe stick out to like the internet as much, but I think there's something to be said that Ryan Gosling obviously breaks. He's from his first time hosting on season 41. He breaks in like half the sketches, and the whole thing is him laughing. And Lauren notoriously hates that. So for Lauren to keep bringing him back clearly means he is, one, doing something and really vibes with the cast and likes it, and two, is doing something from a ratings perspective that like is really, really successful. And I think, yes, while 18 is a little high, but I feel like 20 wouldn't be that high. Like something about being like in the top 20 or like having the two in front makes it different for me. But like, there's a reason why they brought him back 3 times in the past, like, what was it, 8 years? Ian Lauren really does not like breaking. Like that's a very known thing. He clearly does something for the audience. The show, yeah, he had a super viral moment this season. I still think without that, he would have been in here because he's had so many viral moments prior to this past season when we're in an age of TikTok and everything like that. So I feel okay where he is, though.
So for me, I'm probably closer to Rebecca on this, and I think that the reason is because if you took Gosling's 3 episodes and put them at the beginning of SNL history, or in the 80s or in the 90s, I think I like them way less. But I think like in the mid 2010s and then into today, I think they play a lot better for what the show has developed. And you watching this may feel like you don't like what the show is today compared to some of those previous eras. But I think he is one of the most perfect hosts for a show like this, that he's willing to basically, and does, whether it's on purpose or not, is basically, breaks the fourth wall in his sketches. And I think that going into this season 49 episode, we found out he was going to host. And there was so much clamoring online to be like, is he going to do a close encounter sketch? Could we potentially get a sequel to Papyrus, like one of the better moments of the 40s? So people were already very excited for him to come back. And then, let's dive in and we'll have this conversation. We had a lot of talk that week about Beavis and Butthead and what it meant and stuff like that. I know that it wasn't for everybody, but again, for me, for a show that's 49 years into its history to be covered in the way that it was that week, because these two guys come on and they just have the most fun possible. in a show that's become so regimented, so everything has to be like according to the law of Lauren's law, and you go through the process week by week. And then to have this like moment where Heidi breaks, his cast member who doesn't usually do it, and then just like everyone who gave up on SNL decades ago comes back to watch this sketch, I think is so powerful for the show and such a good thing for the show that it really does parse for me the difference between what makes like the best hosts of all time and what makes the greatest hosts of all time. And I know that they're words, but basically the difference for me is like, if I had to choose somebody to host an episode, draw somebody from scratch, basically, I would want to pick the best host. But if I had to define who has really achieved the most on the show, I think that Gosling has to be talked about in the top 50. He has some of the greatest moments that, on modern SNL history. And because of that, that's why he makes this list. I think if we're doing the best, it is a much different conversation here for me. So Bill, I know you're feeling exactly opposite, but I want to let you respond to that.
No, I do get your point. And there obviously is a very big difference between best and greatest. But even in modern SNL times, I think there's better hosts than Gosling that aren't going to make this list. Now, all that said, I'm not, he is a very good host. He does have a lot of great moments in these 3 episodes. But, we just talked about it a little bit with ScarJo too. There's not an episode that's going in the Criterion Collection. There's nothing that top to bottom is an all-time classic episode and has to be watched by somebody who's not seen SNL. But your point about Beavis and Butthead, that's the important thing about that sketch. It's obviously a stupid sketch. It's obviously, not brain surgery happening there. But the fact that it did bring all these people back, the amount of people who talked to me, and I'm sure to you, John, that week, that haven't watched SNL, but know we do a podcast, and it was like, did you see that? Did that really happen? Like it was such a moment that SNL can't grasp these days because of the fracturization of pop culture, because there's so many choices. So to have him in this sketch and be a very important part of it, obviously Heidi's breaking is a big part of it too, but he's very good in that sketch. He plays the role very well. He plays off of Mikey really well. So that is an important part of being a good host. So again, he's on the cusp for me, on the cusp of 651 hosts in the history of the show. I don't think that's too bad, but 17, again, way too high.
Yeah. And I'm going to argue, like, I don't think he has a bad episode. Like, are any of his episodes all-time greats? I'm not sure, but I think you can. I think his season 49 episode, once the Beavis and Butthead talk, which is still going on, will wash away over the years. I think we're going to look back and we're going to find other moments in season 49 that were really good, including Get That Boy Back, which I think was a great Chloe Trost sketch that Gosling was really strong in. His Barbenheimer monologue, I think, was very good as well. The engagement sketch, which was more of a Dismukes, vehicle, but it was still a sketch that I think Gosling was really good in. Like, there were moments here that I think were really strong. So, Law, for you, let's talk about some of those moments and anything you had written down from Gosling's 3 times hosting the show.
Yeah, man. Like, I love his Weekend Update appearances. So, first time he did it, he was with Bobby Moynihan doing Bobby's what was the character? Anthony Crispino, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, like, Ryan had his own character and blended in really well, right? And so he goes and he hosts the season opener, the Jay-Z episode. And it was funny about Ryan, again, it's like if you were to typecast Ryan, like, you would probably think of the guy who just bought a boat, right? And so of course he turns into a guy who just joined the Soho House or whatever it was next to Alex Moffat's character. Like, him being able to do that, to look so smooth doing it, to have fun with it, to be funny, those are great. And I think that we probably would have gotten another one of those moments at Weekend Update if back in when he just hosted, if that wasn't also the episode that Caitlin Clark came to the Weekend Update desk and had, again, a great moment, a well-timed moment, just ahead of the WNBA draft. Like, there's only so much time, especially now. Like, Weekend Update has been really, like, they've been cutting things kind of close. But I feel like if that wasn't Caitlin Clark's time to make that cameo, Ryan probably would have had another character that he would have blended in with. We can speculate who or what that was, but it's fun when a host comes on Weekend Update. It's rare; it doesn't happen often, and that's what he did the first 2 times with 2 different characters. I thought that was really cool.
Rebecca, what about you? Any moments that you want to talk about from Gosling's episodes?
Yeah, well, Papyrus is my favorite in my Mount Rushmore favorite sketches of all time. So I'm definitely biased to Ryan Gosling for that. I mean, I'm like a graphic design like nerd, so that is like right up my alley. And it's like a super reference. I think a lot of his things are very, very in like the vernacular of pop culture. And that doesn't really happen that much in SNL these days. So yes, the Beavis and Butthead, Papyrus is definitely in that, and also Close Encounters as well. And obviously, like, he breaks, and he's not the kooky one, and it's not it's Kate McKinnon's type of a sketch to really shine in. But I think he has a lot of just like pop culture moments on the show, or just in general that are talked about on the show. I think Pete doing I'm Just Pete based off of Ryan Gosling, like, he has been a staple just in the world right now. And there have been La La Land references too on SNL that I feel like he definitely has more of a cultural impact, which is why he is 17 on this list. I think if a lot of these didn't go viral, then he wouldn't be just for his pure talent in the sketches, but because, again, people come up to me and they know that I do this podcast and they're not SNL's biggest fans, but they know those sketches. And I always think from the thing, you sit down with a friend who doesn't watch and you want to convince them to watch, you're probably going to show them Close Encounter. And I'm going to show them Papyrus. And these days you would show them Beavis and Butthead. And that's why he's on here, not because he is like the number 1 host of all, or number 17 host of all time. It would be because of like his impact that it's actually had in SNL and culture, which you didn't really see in the 40s of like seasons of SNL. So that's why I think he is where he is. And yes, these best moments are not only just best moments of him, they're best moments of SNL these seasons. So I think that's definitely something really important to call out. Another one is Santa Baby. That was like one for me that I just love. And I'm on a weird Christmas kick this episode, but that one I really, really love. And that's why he's 17. Well, I don't personally agree that he should be above some of the other hosts on this list. I think the reason why he is because like, it's kind of helped make SNL relevant. And people are talking about Beavis and Butthead more than they are talking about his Ken performance at the Oscars this year. They're both spoken about a lot, but people are still like, have you seen that Beavis and Butthead? No one's gone back to rewatch him singing I'm Just Ken. So that's why he is where he is, in my opinion. And that's why they will have him back. They have him do cameos. I wouldn't be surprised if in the season 50 special, they just had him be Beavis and Butthead at some point, not its own standalone, but just like make a cameo doing that again, because that's part of SNL culture today. So that's why I think he's here.
Yeah, and I love what you said. You said the words, he makes SNL relevant. And I guess the big question for us as we're going through this list is how much does making SNL relevant, how much is that important for a host to do? Is that a part of their job to make SNL relevant? And I think that if that is one of the goals of, the SNL producers to bring on hosts and make the show relevant, he definitely accomplishes that. Going back to his first time hosting, where you mentioned this Close Encounter sketch, and I'll say for myself, I'm watching this sketch 6 years after I'm done in high school. And for me, high school was watching SNL and talking with my friends about these sketches, and it was the best time. And then most of my friends fell off the show. Like, we go up, we grow old, we go out, and we don't watch the show anymore. And when this sketch aired, and the moment that Kate had and Cecily and Gosling, I had everyone I knew who stopped watching the show was like, yo, did you see this Close Encounter sketch last night? And it was just like, it was such a big deal. So the fact that he has not one, not two, if you count Papyrus, but 3 of these moments where people come back to watch the show because he brings it back to relevancy, I think is a huge point in his favor. So Bill, any other moments for you that you want to talk about on the list of Ryan Gosling's hits?
Well, Rebecca mentioned the Santa Baby. I mean, one of the greatest Christmas pre-tapes that we've gotten over the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years. If you haven't seen that in a while, go back and watch that, even though it's not Christmas time. I love the sleepover dad with 80 in that first episode. He plays really well off of her. She's this over sexualized teenager who's in love with her friend's father, and there's a lot of fun stuff there as well. Terrazzano's Italian restaurant with Cecily in season 43, where they fool all these people. It's kind of Farley-esque with the Taster's Choice, but they think they're in a fancy Italian restaurant and they find out that it's Pizza Hut, and Ryan and Cecily lose their shit, and it's so much fun to watch them kind of just explode all over Mikey Day. But yeah, so those are just a couple, and nobody's brought up the engagement. Like that was probably the funniest sketch in his last episode, even though there was a lot of Dismukes in there and a lot of his heavy lifting, but it is still one of the best sketches of season 49.
Yeah, another one that I really liked also was the Naughty Elf sketch from season 41 with him and Keenan and Vanessa. Really fun as well. So, he does have these moments where he just seems like he's having the best week ever. I'm sure like being one of the biggest stars in the world can be kind of stressful. And for him, I think when he goes to SNL, he has a great time. As far as some criteria I look at when I talk about Gosling, could he be a cast member? I absolutely do not see it. I don't think in any world Ryan Gosling could have been a cast member on Saturday Night Live. So I got to definitely reduce some points there as far as his evaluation. I don't know that he fits perfectly in the SNL format, but what he does do for SNL is a positive in other ways. Does he have a brand he brings to the show? I do think he has a brand. I think the Gosling brand is very unique. Is breaking part of his brand? Certainly. I think we all know if we get Ryan Gosling hosting in season 50 or in the future, we know what to expect when we're going to get Gosling out there. So for me, very clearly defined brand that they've liked enough to bring back 3 times. Can he work with multiple casts? We've seen it over a period of 8 years. I think that there's something there, but I don't know that I have enough evidence to say that he's so fantastic that could have worked in any era. I really think he fits well with this modern era, but I cannot see a Ryan Gosling working very well in the 90s, 80s, 70s. I just don't see it as much. So for me, these are things that are like, would put him down my list a little bit. Analytically, 8.34 sketches per episode, so a little bit above average there, a little lower than Scarlett Johansson, but still above average. So he is very involved when he's on the show. We mentioned him being on Update a couple times, so that boosts those numbers. 1 guest appearance, so he did appear in the Kristen Wiig episode the week prior to his to promote his show, and 1 live from New York as well. So he has some things on his resume. I do think he's definitely has a case to be in the top 50, and I feel better about it more than Bill and Law do, but 17 is probably too high for me. So let's go around the round table one more time. We'll do some final thoughts on Ryan Gosling. Rebecca, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about criteria, I'm thinking about it different. Obviously, everyone that voted and picked their favorite host of all time, that from the listeners, they had their own criteria as well. And when you're saying yes, he absolutely, I cannot see him in the cast. That's not my mind. And for Scarlett, yes, I can see her in the cast. And in my mind, being really standing out as a host in a greatest host, not a greatest could potentially be cast members draft, that makes the most sense to me as like a host. Like it wasn't just, oh, this episode, and Scarlett again is awesome. She fits in with the cast, but her episodes weren't like her episodes, like, oh my God, like the Scarlett Johansson episode. Because what point in time in my life was I at when Scarlett Johansson hosted this episode? I don't know. But I can tell you what was happening for me for Ryan Gosling episode is like a time marker. If they can do both, fit in the cast and be a great host, and I think that's what we're going to start to see as we move higher up this list, is people that like either have been or could be really be in the cast or host. But like he resonates more with me than Scarlett does because his episodes are his episodes. And like they're really, really tied to him as a character and his characterizations in the show. So I feel okay with him here. I think he could have been down a little bit, but there's no one that I'm like, you absolutely like have to put them above Ryan Gosling in my personal list. But there's some people that you can make a really strong argument for, but like, and I might agree, but I'm like, I feel okay with him here at this point in time.
Yeah, and probably the Mount Rushmore hosts have both of those things. They have a where were you when this episode aired, and they also fit really well in the SNL formula. So, if you have one or the other, that's probably why you're a little bit further down this list. But Law, for you, final thoughts on Ryan Gosling here at 17?
You know, it's funny, man. Like I could absolutely see him being cast. If this was the '80s, like he would have been in that Anthony Michael Hall role. He would have been in the Ben Stiller role. And you know what made me think of that is when we get introduced to SNL host Ryan Gosling, who's in his monologue, Mike Myers, and looking at the synergy that those two like played off of each other. Like I thought that was really, first of all, the fact that that's like the most recent time I believe uh, that Mike Myers was even on the show is really like kind of jarring for me. But that's another story, I guess. But I just like love that that's how SNL chose to kind of break the ice for Ryan Gosling to be on the show, is to have not just an SNL legend but a Canadian legend. Like Ryan's out here trying to play off that he's from New York or whatever, Brooklyn specifically, and then like Mike Myers is like, bro, you're Canadian, like embrace it. And in a way, his 3 hosting appearances have just seen Ryan Gosling like be be himself, be comfortable, maybe too comfortable, and it's been like again, like I feel like it's been fun watching him host. Like there's been a formula to a Ryan Gosling show. Like even his last 2 shows, like the monologues in those shows have been some of his best female co-stars in the films that he's in. Emily Blunt, and before that, Emma Stone. So uh, it'll be interesting to see if and when and how another Ryan Gosling episode goes. Like I think there is a bar there. I don't know if he can be better than what he has already been, but it's been I do enjoy the fact that he's been able to come on the show, be himself, have a lot of fun, and that gets him into this top 20.
All right, Bill, your final thoughts on Gosling at 17.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what his trajectory is coming back to the show in future seasons. Does he fit kind of that early Alec Baldwin mold where he's the really good looking super movie star who's coming on to the show with all these comedy people, and but eventually almost becomes part of the cast and molds into this different kind of host as the years go on over 30 years. So will we see a Ryan Gosling in season 55 or 60, and will it be a different host? It'll be funny to see how that plays out. Never going to be mad that he comes back to host. I think he's a lot of fun. He brings a really fun energy to the show whenever he's on, and hopefully we get a little bit of a break until the special in February. And I would be shocked, as Rebecca said, like if we don't see Beavis and Butthead at that point, because they're going to want to focus on that. But maybe a year or 2 off from him hosting a 4th time.
Yeah, you hear that? Bill says Ryan Gosling going to host 14 more times. All right. Well, let's get to our last host that we're going to reveal here tonight, and that is number 16. And this one should be a lot of fun to talk about. This is a host who is in the 5-Timers Club, somebody who you know very well and that I love to talk about here on the podcast. And that is at number 16, the legendary former SNL cast member Kristen Wiig here at number 16. So interesting trajectory for Kristen Wiig as a host here. Comes back the season after she leaves the show. So, she's a rainbow, leaves, and then, the prodigy comes home towards the end of season 38, where she hosts with Vampire Weekend in 2013, returns a few years later for the Thanksgiving episode, musical guest The XX in 2016, comes all the way back, believe it or not, in an official hosted episode, season 45, episode 18. This is one of the at-home episodes, one of the most unique episodes in SNL history in May of 2020, with Boyz II Men and Babyface as the official musical guest. Returns in the same year, 6 or 7 months later, with Dua Lipa, her first time on the show, as musical guest in 2020. And then another episode that we covered here this past season, in season 49, with musical guest Ray in 2024. In, to me, a fantastic episode that we had this past season that I think absolutely helped catapult her up this list. So, Bill, thoughts on Kristen Wiig here at 16?
One of my favorites of all time. as I've said many times. We've talked about these last two hosts tonight, and neither one of them really having that Pantheon episode. I think her first hosting gig is one of those that can be discussed that way. Um, and her at home is so interesting. And going back and watching that is a little jarring, even 4 years after COVID. Um, and this is where our argument, John, that we've had about Paul Simon not being officially listed as a host comes into play a little bit more, because here we have a host who's in two segments. Now, that was the way it was set up, and that was, but this is what we're talking about here. And
She was paid as the host, though. That's the difference.
She was paid $750 as the host, right? I'm sure Lauren Venmoed it right over to her. But come on.
If she signed a contract and she was paid as the host, then it counts. So
I do agree that she should be counted as a host. Paul should be as well. But anyway, this is interesting, because I think, when in Kristen and Will Ferrell, who we talked about last week, there's a lot of similarities here. The greatest of their casts in many regards. But Will's hosted 6 times and Kristen's hosted 4.5. So there's a little bit to be dissected there, but all 5 of her episodes are really, really good. That bottle episode of the At Home, just I can remember clearly watching those, and it was just almost a sense of normalcy, even though these people that you love that were doing a show in a studio like 8H were now filming themselves on their phones, but it was just something that we needed at that time. And to have Kristen come in to host what was essentially the finale was really a lot of good comfort food. So that's what we get every time that we get her, because she's just so beloved, even by those who think that she did too many recurring characters, or she, dominated the show too much, like that was her fault somehow. It's still just one of those great. If Kristen Wiig is one of the 5 names that if she comes back to host twice in a season, you're going to be happy to hear it.
Law, I never heard your opinion on Kristen Wiig as both a cast member and host. So how do you feel about her and how she landed on this list at 16?
It's really cool. She hosted for the first time, 10 months or just over a year since after she left the cast, right? May 2013. Right. That episode, you can count on one hand how many cast members have turned around, left the show, and came back to host. I think you got Bill Murray, Eddie Murphy, who obviously Eddie hosted when he was a damn cast member, but even after he left, he wound up hosting pretty soon. Pete was supposed to host real soon, but obviously the writer strike kind of delayed his first hosting opportunity. But Kristen, as soon as she left, it was she was on the short list already. Now you look a little over a decade later, she's hosted 5 times, even if one of those times was on Zoom, basically. So I felt like Kristen, when she was a cast member, you really never got to know her. She almost feels like the female Phil Hartman in a way. How she got through the show was almost entirely through her characters and through her impressions. Clearly a great cast member, but almost one who is Kristen Wiig is very much not her own personality more than her characters. And so hosting is always funny, because you come back to hosting and it's okay, so you got to be yourself at least a little bit. And I remember when Phil Hartman, when he first hosted, you broke down crying or whatever. It's I'm in these commercials, I do impressions. What the hell am I supposed to do? Be myself, right? And Kristen Wiig, first time she hosted, she was Gilly. It was the most natural thing. And so it's been really fun, getting to know her differently as a host than she was as a cast member. I think that's hard. There's a lot of this list has a lot of cast members on it already, from 20 through 50 on the list. And it's I think it's not the easiest process. I don't know how many times Kate McKinnon's going to wind up hosting, for example, because Kate, I think it is like that a lot too. Though I think we got to know Kate a lot more as Kate McKinnon while she was a cast member than we ever got to see from Kristen Wiig. Like Kristen Wiig would never get on the piano after a presidential election, for example. So I love that she's on this list. I don't know how many. I don't know if it's possible. I think she might be the highest. Maybe someone else, but as she's clearly going to be one of the highest female cast members, hosts on this show, on this list, and that's really cool to see.
Yeah, she came in 5 on the cast ranking, and I had her at 3 for me. I mean, I think that she is so important to the history of the show. I love what you said, Law, about how it was hard to get to know her during her time as a cast member, but truly it was just because she just blended so well with the SNL format. Like I think, we talked about this during the cast countdown. To me, she was like built in a lab to be on SNL. And there's only a few people that you can talk about that about. And she is that. And I think transitioning from her to a host, it's very easy for then her to pick up where she left off, because she's just going to, do the characters, play the hits, and everyone's going to love it. And I think that what was different about this last episode that we got to see her in season 49, which I think in retrospect, will make the greatest episode countdown. I think that episode was that good. And to me, this was the best episode of season 49, one of the best episodes in the 40s. Just top to bottom was just banger after banger. And I think it was because she brought back different characters than she had in a long time. She was playing with different cast members. She really worked with her well. Like, she really stretched herself in a way that maybe she hadn't in those other episodes. And it showed me, like, to me, it even boosted her legacy even more. So the fact that she's 16 on this list, like, totally makes sense to me. But Rebecca, does it make sense to you where we got Kristen here?
Yeah, I mean, she's my favorite cast member of all time. I think that goes back and forth between her and Kate, but because of Kristen's hosting ability, she's really cemented herself as my number one. Obviously, her time in the show, she was epic. But coming back to host, you see her really come into her own, which I think is special and like great to watch, because of course, as Law, you mentioned, like, yeah, we didn't really know her when she was on the show, and then she leaves and she starts to make her name for herself just in the world, and she kind of becomes like a style icon of sorts, where she's just like, just watching her go. And then she comes back to do her hosting in season 38, and it's a ton of repeat characters that we've seen her on the show, and it was like, oh, which is she going to do? And obviously she did the Target Lady, and she really came back and was like, oh, I'm just going to like do me on the show. And then as time progressed, like, I think she helped save the SNL at home. I think seeing someone like that and having them be the host, someone that everyone's very familiar with and comfortable with, and it was the best of the SNL at home. Not like it was a really high bar, but I think that helped show that she is adaptable, and it felt like a sense of normalcy. Like, hey, we're going to actually have a host for this episode, and it's going to be someone you're comfortable with, who's going to play into this and not be super awkward at home on Zoom. And then after that, seeing like her Dua Lipa episode and her season 49 episode, I think she really, in my mind, cemented herself as like, you're a really good host, actually. Like, people are probably going to talk about her latest 2 like hostings more than they will her old ones. And I love seeing a repeat character when a host comes back. Like, couldn't wait when Kate came back. Like, what is she going to do? But now it's nice that like we kind of don't have that with Kristen anymore. It's not like, what is she going to do? It's, what is she going to bring? So I think that's why I think she should be higher on this list. I don't know if people, when they vote for who they want to be, they take into account the fact that they were cast members and probably push them down a little, because it's a harder gig technically if you've never been on the show to come and host the show, but also it's harder to find your bearings as a host versus a cast member. And I think her first episode, season 38, was good, and then it just kept getting progressively better. So she's someone I want to see host 5 more times and make the 10 Timers Club. So I'm really, really happy about being able to speak about her though tonight.
Yeah, to me, she's like the easiest yes. Like, if you know that Kristen's available, I think you have to book her for the show. You just know it's going to be solid. There's no way that Kristen's going to have a bad episode. I mean, 2 of her episodes, let's be frank, 2 of her episodes were impacted by COVID. So not even just the at-home episode, but we also have to count that season 46 episode. That was like the tail end of the extreme COVID restrictions that they were operating under, where people, couldn't get together all week, and, rehearsals were all messed up. So again, like even then, I think there were some really strong moments from that episode. So Rebecca, I'm going to head back to you. Tell me some moments that you want to talk about from Kristen Wiig's time as a host.
Yeah, to wrap up my Christmas mentions, Christmas morning is one of my like all-time favorite like pre-tapes, because I think it's just very relatable. And I think she does something where she can be just that normal woman in a lot of these, but be absurd. So her doing that sketch, that was something that I saw and I immediately sent it to everyone in my family and my grandma and my mom, and being like, this is so funny and so relatable, because she does the extreme. She has the range to really go all the way to be the Target lady or Gilly or all of these like really extreme funny characters, but she also a lot of the time can be just like the anchor of the sketch. And I think that we saw that in this most recent episode. We saw Jumanji. She was kind of the anchor and she wasn't the one like being insane, but then we see her update being Aunt Linda. And I think she has that range where it's like you do so many good things that you're not pigeonholed into one type of person, which I think is really important for longevity, to come back and host and be on the show for as long as she was and all of that.
Law, what about you? Any moments from her time hosting the show that you would like us to talk about?
So I get visibly uncomfortable anytime I got to see Sue, and she did Sue a couple times as a host, and it's just like this thing of it's just relatable. Like you have somebody, you're at their house, you're chilling, and in her case, wearing this really uncomfortable sweater, and you're just like, you could just take the damn thing off, you could change whatever. And her physical comedy, I just think is exceptional, especially from an average sized person. Like it's not like Kristen Wiig goes up and you expect physical comedy. And so like getting to do that as a host, obviously, I think she has advantages being a former cast member. But like, I really will point out that being one of the things that she's done. I think the last couple times she's hosted the show, just because watching her in that role, and that's a recurring character, makes me uncomfortable. Like even when she got to be John Hamm's secretary, which again, like Kristen Wiig's hosting, and then somehow it feels like she's in the damn cast because of all the damn cameos and whatnot. And it's like, you make me uncomfortable. It feels like watching a train wreck, but the train wreck, that is a good thing in comedy. So I definitely had to mention that.
Yeah, I love that one. That is so great and such a great call on your part. There are, I guess, characters that people feel like they've seen so much of Kristen, but I still think that one is pretty well regarded among the fans of like, oh, okay, as long as we keep finding new reasons to bring back Sue, we can get that one again. Bill, for you, let's talk about some other moments that you love from Kristen's hosting career.
Well, I have to start with my favorite hosting moment by Kristen from her very first gig, Double Date with Cecily, Tim Robinson, and our friend of the show, Bobby, where there are these two older women and they're on a date with these two sixth grade boys, but they're treating it as if they're two adults. And Taryn's great in that as well as the waiter. But yeah, I mean, here it is, as she says in her monologue, 11 months and 30 days since she was in the cast. But because of the turnover that year and bringing in Cecily and 80, we get to see her work with new people immediately. So that's a lot of fun to be able to see right out of the gate. And then, I mean, Thanksgiving Parade in her second one in season 42, where she's Madeline, the large balloon that's going by Beck's apartment. That was a lot of fun as well. I mean, there's so many great Californians. Lawrence Welk, we get. There's such a great mix in all of her episodes of new stuff and stuff we've seen before. And that is really, said it before, what we want when a cast member comes back to host. So I think she has the perfect balance in most of her episodes to find that route where it's stuff we haven't seen before. I mean, we haven't seen Target Lady, I don't think, since season 38. Is that correct?
I believe
that
so.
was the last time she did it. So it's not like she's bringing back the most obvious people every single time. And as you said, John, like this last time, bringing back Aunt Linda, bringing back Gail, which was a nice surprise in the toast one with Forte. And that episode was just so fantastic. That monologue with all those cameos, with all the people pretending that they were in the Five Timers Club, was just such a great twist on getting your Five Timers jacket after having done this so many times, and it can get a little stale. So to have a different take on that for one of the all-time best cast members when they get their jacket was a really great tribute to her.
Yeah,
And of course,
I think one of the go ahead, Locke, please.
Yeah, I think Ryan. I'm pretty sure Ryan Gosling was one of the
Yes.
one of the damn mock hosts, and he was going to be in the show the very next week.
Yeah, it was so good. I love that monologue. I really just praise that tremendously, and I think that like that was one of the better monologues we've seen in a while. You know, I probably could have used a little bit less of secret word, but I do think that there are some characters of hers that I would love to see come back eventually. Penelope, but you know, the ones that we did get in this season 49 episode were fantastic. I never thought we'd see Aunt Linda again. I never thought we would get that toast sketch again with Will Forte coming back as Hamilton. And I had like the biggest laugh in years just watching that sketch play. I was so excited about that one. Jumanji, to me, I know we praised it all season long, but like that sketch was so brilliant. And to see, you know, Dismukes, who we've been praising all season, like pull off this moment where he's going head to head with a Mount Rushmore cast member, and then Forte come in at the end and just put the cherry on top to that sketch. Like it is one of the best sketches I've seen in a very long time. So I love that one. And I also love, Bill, that you said how well she got to work with Kate, Cecily, and Adie. Like all the talk for so many years while Kristen Wiig was a cast member was how Kristen Wiig, despite how great she is, was a problem for other women at the show. And I think that's look, I think it's a little bit of a false narrative and not fair to put on Kristen's back, but at least that's something that that is something that people were saying. And I think, you know, there was the theory that Kristen doesn't work well with other women on the show because she's so dominant. But then to have her come back in that season 38 episode, to see her work with a Kate McKinnon, with an Adie Bryant in that acupuncture sketch that they do with Sudeikis, that with the blood all over them, and then they introduce, you know, Vampire Weekend, all like with the blood all over their shirt, like that was so fantastic. In the next episode in 42, to see her do Whiskers Are We with Kate McKinnon, like one of her biggest characters, like these were moments that were really important for Kristen Wiig's career, in my opinion, at least in terms of SNL, to show that, like, you know, she really could have worked in any era, that she didn't have to be in this era where women besides her were not so dominant for her to be considered so great, that she still would have been an amazing top, you know, 10 cast member of all time if she was put in a cast with a Gilda Radner, a Jan Hooks, you know, a Kate McKinnon, you know, wherever it is. I just think that she still could have pulled it off. And for me, that is, you know, why she is so fantastic as a host and definitely deserves to be up here into the top 20. Rebecca, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. It's like she features criteria that it's like, first of all, you could be in any, I think, season of the show, whether she was a cast member or a host, and it would have fit well with the cast. And I know her being very dominant in sketches was not her problem. Like it was the way that they casted and they did everything. And I think that she must be a joy to work with, because in every single one of her episodes, they've had huge cameos from people. And like, you know how that happens. It's like, oh, blah, blah, blah's hosting. Like if they didn't like the host, these cameos wouldn't happen, because why do they have to? But looking here, her first episode, Jonah Hill and Maya Rudolph came back. And then Alec Baldwin, Will Forte, Steve Martin, Jason Sudeikis, Martin Short, Danny Trejo, Tina Fey. There's some more good ones. Obviously, the last episode she had said so many. Maya Rudolph, like these people came back and they're like, Kristen's hosting. This is about to be a really good episode. And I think that she's really proven herself throughout. I mean, you looked at the first Vampire Weekend. There was the first episode of Vampire Weekend. She was Gilly, Target Lady, and the Californians all in that first one. So I think they were a little trepidatious to have someone so iconic come back and really be host. And now those are not even the ones that we discuss when we think about her on the show in recent years. It's not her recurring sketches as a host. It's her new sketches. And I think working with with Kate in Whiskers Are We is one of my favorite Whiskers Are We. I think that and the Billie Eilish ones are my two top favorite Whiskers Are We sketches. and she's the host, and she's not even on the cast, and it's Kate's thing, and like she fit in so well. So like if they brought her back to the cast now, she would still do such a great job. So I feel really, really happy that she's made the top 20. I think she could have been a little higher, because as far as like returning SNL cast members, I think that's a separate draft in itself. I think she's in the top like 3 of that for hosting. So
Yeah,
but
yeah, and we shall see if any others pop up as we keep going. But yeah, for me overall, I mean, obviously criteria, could she have been a cast member? Duh. Does she have a defining characteristic? I think she built an archetype for herself on the show, very unique cast member. Can you work with multiple casts? So we've seen her, host over a period of 11 years. Clearly, is starting to work with different types of cast members. Again, Dismukes in the Jumanji sketch, I think, is a great. If you're going to go back and look at her resume, watch her tape, I think like, hey, yeah, she's definitely could work with anybody. So for me, she's right there. Analytically, only 7 sketches per episode, but clearly diminished by the 2 segments that we got of her in season 45. So let's just say, hypothetically, she would have been an 8 if that was a normal episode. I think that we're looking at this being a deflated number. So this could have been, higher up there. And I don't think we can fault her for that necessarily. I mean, she just basically carries the show in a really rough time. That's something that I wouldn't count too much. But from a legacy perspective, her legacy at the show, obviously as a cast member, is absolutely tremendous every time she hosts an event. And the fact that she did host for her official 5th time, getting that sort of like pseudo 5-timers jacket with all of those people, one of the bigger 5-timers moments. I think if we're going to, start thinking about, besides the 5-timers club, which 5-timers moments were the greatest moments in the history of the show, I think we're going to look back at that Kristen 5-timers monologue as being one of the biggest ones ever. So for me, legacy points as well. It totally deserves to be here near the top. Law, let's get your final thoughts on Kristen Wiig here at 16.
Yeah, I was thinking of how Kristen just edged out Will Ferrell on this list, and I feel like Will, it's a little maybe Will's time hosting has been a little disappointing. I know Will's hosted 5 times, but Will hasn't. It just feels like Kristen has had so much in the bag when she hosted. Like Rebecca brought it up, like she brought like 5 characters the first time she came back to host a show, and so like I do think that it'll be interesting to see how many more times she gets to host. She obviously could bring the Target lady back. She could bring a whole lot of things. Like the first time she hosted was back in 2013. Like the entire cast is turned over, except for Kenan Thompson since then. And I think that last year was huge because it showed that, again, like you get to host seamlessly with basically the cast that you left, and now you hosting with a pretty much completely different cast. Like that's really cool. Again, with Will, I feel like as Will, obviously, I feel like is a better cast member. I feel like Will saved the damn show in the 90s, but like I don't think Will had as much of a tail being the kind of host that leaned on the things that he has as cast member. And I feel like every time that Kristen Wiig's hosted, it's been a callback to her time in the cast, as well as being able to do other things outside of the crutches. So just a phenomenal host, obviously a phenomenal cast member, and she's ageless too. Like she's 50, and it's like we don't look at her as like, oh, Kristen Wiig, she's 50. It's like she's phenomenal. So shout out to Kristen Wiig.
Yeah, and could potentially have like another 20 years of hosting the show, like where she could come back many times. So still has a resume to continue to build here. And you'll never get to me to argue, Will Ferrell versus Kristen Wiig. I mean, again, I have them as 2 and 3 respectively on my Mount Rushmore of cast members. So for me, 2 of the all-time greats and clearly 2 of the better hosts in SNL history as well. Bill, your final thoughts on Kristen Wiig here at 16.
Yeah, Law put it perfectly. I mean, Will getting to talk about Will and Kristen in successive weeks, it just kind of highlights the fact that how important they are. The show is very different than it was even 25 years ago, and tragedy befell people like Gilda, Phil, Farley. So we didn't get to see these other eras, other than some people like Billy and Chevy, come back multiple times upon multiple times. So we can't compare a lot of the first 25 years with cast members coming back to host because of that, and the fact that SNL didn't have a female cast member come back to host for 30 years. But Kristen's on the fast track. I mean, it'll be interesting to see over the next couple of years with Kate. Does Cecily come back? I would think so. 80, I would think so. So, she's going to have some competition as far as alumni coming back to host. I think she'll get to 10 easily, and I'm not opposed to it at all.
So who gets the 10 first right now, if you had to say between Kristen, Scarlett, and Tina? Let's throw those three out there.
I think probably ScarJo, just because, as we've already said, like just how seamlessly she fits in, how she could be, called in from down the road from Colin in her house, and to come in. I mean, I'm sure when she came and did Katie Britt, like that was probably a Thursday where they called her. Now, obviously, you can't do that if you're hosting, but yeah, I would think ScarJo, but just by a little.
Yeah, you want to take some bets, you guys?
I completely disagree. Also, throw Emma Stone in there, and then I think Emma takes it. But I don't think. I think my order would be probably Emma Stone, Tina Fey, Kristen Wiig, then ScarJo, and people to come back and host. I'm also going to put Kate McKinnon in there. It's so new, but she has so much longevity. Like for her to come
but they're
back
all
and
way ahead of her.
hit
So
some.
I mean,
yeah.
Law, what do you
she's
think?
also younger, so
Yeah, true.
Well, does Tina Fey take over for Lauren Michaels? I think that's the question for me.
Right,
but
that would.
That's a good caveat. That she won't host. So that's
that's the tough one. I feel like Kristen Wiig would get it before Scarlett. I don't know if Scarlett is trying to really host again. Like it's been 5 years and she hasn't hosted since her and Colin got married, and I just don't know how often they'd want to keep. Well, a lot depends on Colin's role as well, but I just feel like Kristen Wiig would be more available to do it than someone like Scarlett Johansson.
Okay, well, on that note, let's transition over to our final segment of the night where we are going to show you the list that we have revealed so far. We're going to show you my list reordered and Bill's list reordered. And then Rebecca and Law, you can vote on which list is better based on our new rankings. This is a fluid list that we edit every single week. So if you in the chat have some opinions of things we should change, you're obviously welcome to them. So here we go. Let's put it up on screen. We have 3 different lists here. So on the left, we have the host rankings. In the middle, we have John rankings. On the right, we have Bill rankings. So I'll go first this time. So up from 35, I got Paul Simon, Charles Barkley, Pedro Pascal, John Lithgow, Amy Poehler, Maya Rudolph, Anne Hathaway, Jack Black, Lily Tomlin, and Conan O'Brien. My top 25 starts with Louis C.K., Peyton Manning, Larry David, Jimmy Fallon, Lindsay Lohan, Galifianakis, Dwayne Johnson, Brolin, and I have Gosling here at 17. Again, Gosling here, if this was a list of best hosts of all time, I don't know that he cracks it at all. But in terms of greatness, in terms of legacy, I start to think about some moments here. And with that Beavis and Butthead moment, I start to put him in the same category of a guy like Chappelle, who I do question some of what he brought to the show, but from a legacy perspective is a huge, huge name. So I think Gosling somewhat falls in that category. That's sort of my argument for him halfway through my list. Then I do have Chappelle at 16, and my top 15 right now is Barrymore, Pryor, Idol, Marty Short at 12, Jim Carrey at 11, and my top 10 is JLD, followed by Gould, Candice Bergen, Bill Murray, Danny DeVito, Paul Rudd is in my top 5, Dana Carvey, and then cracking my top 3 this week are Kristen Wiig and Scarlett Johansson. Kristen Wiig is at 3 for me. Will Ferrell is at 2, and Scarlett Johansson is my number 1 host right now, just for now. But I think that she really checks off all the boxes of everything that I'm looking for. The fact that she has hosted that 6th time, doesn't have a bad episode in the bunch, truly fits the mold of what they're looking for as a host. I think that's why she gets there as my number 1 spot right now. Wiig and Farrell, I think, as Law was talking about, you could sort of put one over the other, but I think I have Wiig right now at 3. And, certainly with this last episode is a legacy moment for me with this episode. And I sort of think Will has that with Goodnight Saigon, as we talked about last week. So right now, my Mount Rushmore, in terms of what we revealed so far, is 3 former cast members and Scarlett Johansson. It'll be interesting to see how this list turns out. But Bill Kenny, tell us what your list is right now.
Well, starting from 35, I've got Paul Simon, Anne Hathaway, Charles Barkley, Pedro Pascal, Jimmy Fallon, John Lithgow, Dwayne Johnson, Jack Black. I slotted Gosling in here at 27. Just looking at the eyeball test with some of the people that are around him, I don't think he had better than Conan or Louis or even Drew Barrymore. So had to put him in here. 26, I've got Conan. 25, Amy, Louis C.K., Drew Barrymore, Maya, Josh Brolin, Dave Chappelle, Lindsay Lohan, Larry David, Eric Idle, Peyton Manning. And going into my top 15, I've got Lily Tomlin, Richard Pryor, Zach Galifianakis, Paul Rudd, Elliot Gould. Cracking my top 10, Candice Bergen, Marty Short, Jim Carrey, Julie Louis-Dreyfus, Dana Carvey, Danny DeVito. I've got Kristen here at 4 and Scarlett at 3. Number 2, her Lost in Translation co-star Bill Murray, and then still have Will in the top spot. As far as Kristen, again, just it's not even taking points off really, but the fact that she doesn't have 5 full episodes to kind of look at over Will's. Scarlett, I think with the 6 great episodes that she had, she's right there with Bill Murray as far as overall greatness on the show as far as hosting.
All right, Law, what do you think about these 2 lists? Which one would you vote for if you had to pick?
Had a vote. I'm probably going with Bill's list. I like Will Ferrell, Bill Murray being right at the top there. Not that I got a bone to pick with Ryan Gosling, but I'm much more comfortable with Ryan being a little bit lower down the list. Just on guys, just on who we talked about today, obviously. But I mean, respect to both lists, to be honest. Like Bill, what was the number? 620 some hosts in the last
651, I believe, is the total. Yeah.
That's crazy. And obviously a lot of what I do is ranking and historical context stuff on a pro sports level. Like and pro sports is significantly more objective than what we're doing with SNL and the people who've hosted this show. So shout out to both of y'all. I'm probably taking Bill's list, but
it's okay.
But just the fact that we're even talking about this is amazing.
Thanks. Rebecca, you have a vote as well. So are you going to also go with Bill's list or are you going to tie it up for tonight?
I'm not. I'm actually going to tie it up for tonight. So how do you know I'm not choosing the listeners list?
That's not a thing.
Okay, fine. I was choosing yours, but I really don't feel right with Scarlett Johansson being above Will Ferrell or Kristen Wiig on your list. I don't feel right about her being above Kristen Wiig or Will Ferrell at all, but I'm choosing your list because a lot of the other shout outs like on here too. Paul Rudd is definitely in my top 10 of all-time hosts. So that was a big winning argument here. Julia Louis-Dreyfus being in the current top 10 of yours too is another reason why I chose it. And I think it's just a pretty solid list. Drew Barrymore in 15, Martin Short in 12.
Wait. I have Julia higher than he does. Hold on.
Bill.
I said in the top 10. I don't think she
really
should be
talking,
7.
Bill. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm also, the only thing is like pretty wild between like the listeners like vote and yours is like you both have Danny DeVito so high. And I love Danny DeVito, but cracking both of your current top 10s is like pretty wild. Like
He
definitely top 15, yeah, but like top 10, like that's pretty crazy. But yeah, your lists aren't so inherently different, but just like looking through like that first column on each of yours, I resonated more with John's. But
all right, fair enough.
They're vaguely similar. Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys agree with each other, so it's just good.
Yes. Well, we have 15 more hosts to reveal, and we're going to continue to refine these lists over the next 5 weeks. Bill, as far as your predictions are concerned, so 5 timers, you added I took away a half a point for Paul Simon, but I'm going to give you Kristen Wiig if you're okay with it. So here you go, 10.5 out of 18 for the 5 timers. You predicted that we're going to get 16 former cast members. We do have Kristen Wiig that got added to that tonight, so you have 9, and then 1 timer is still 4 out of 5. So how are you feeling about your predictions tonight?
Pretty bad, John. I think I'm done. I'm done across the board here. Unless Betty White is number 1 on everybody's list. It's really hard to imagine. I mean, the cast members, there's just no chance, because if you're telling me there's 7 other cast members that are better than Will and Kristen that have hosted the show, it's impossible to imagine. 5 timers, I feel like I have just a little outside shot here. But yeah, done on cast members and 1 timers for sure, which is shocking.
Right. Well, we shall see what happens over the next few weeks as we have 5 more weeks to go on this countdown list. So it'll be very fun to do that. As far as everything else we have going on here at the SNN, we also have our Everything You Need to Know About Saturday Night Live series, which releases on Thursday nights. We just released season 8, which was a really fun season to talk about. Season 9 comes out this Thursday. We're also going to have a lot of great things happening, including some potential coverage of the Blues Brothers convention that's happening this weekend. And we're sending out Bill Kenny to the Blues Brothers convention. So, Bill, you're going to be a correspondent on the ground with James Stevens this weekend. So, you excited for that?
Very excited. I'm on a mission from God, and it is more than 100 miles. And but yeah, it's going to be really, really exciting to sit down and meet James in person for the very first time. So that'll be a lot of fun as well. Looking forward to it, and can't wait to come back and report to you next week and tell you all the fun stuff.
Yes, absolutely. So I look forward to hearing more about that, and hopefully we'll have some coverage and maybe some interviews from the Blues Brothers convention. Rebecca, thank you for joining us. Anything you would like to plug over the summer?
Thank you for having me. No, nothing crazy to plug. Follow me on social media at Barbecue, except for Twitter. Unfollow my old Twitter account, please. It was hacked and it's posting really, really naughty things that are not coming from me. And then you could refollow me on Twitter at Rebecca Norte, Norte. So follow me there so I can talk to y'all about like SNL as we usually do. But yeah, nothing to plug. Just excited for season 50 to kick off and to hopefully come on an episode or two throughout season 50. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, we will see you there for sure. Law, this was awesome getting to talk to you on the show tonight. Thank you for joining us. You did a great first podcast with us and hopefully the first of many. So please tell the listeners where they can check out all of your amazing work.
Yeah, I'm incredibly privileged to finally get to talk about this show. It's been watching this again 23 straight seasons. So excited for season 50. Excited for what we got at the Athletic. So if you watch NBA, you should definitely be following us there. But give me a reason to tweet about SNL more, man. Like, I want to talk about the show, especially going into 50. I want to talk about the history, and I want to talk about the musical guests, all that. But I definitely hope that we can talk more about the athletes that have hosted the show over this history of the show going into next year, especially at the Athletic. So follow me on social, and definitely don't just follow me. Like, when this season starts, we talking every Saturday night.
Yeah, I'm very pumped. You want to give out your handle as well for people to follow you?
Yeah, I'm at Law Murray, the new LAWMURRAYTHENU.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us.
I can fit there.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, if you want to follow everything we got going on, you could find us on all social platforms at the SNL Network. We're going to be posting some great things as we ramp up to season 50 coverage. And of course, you got to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify to never miss any of the shows we have going on here. After the shows, I love going back and reading the comments to hear what you thought about these reveals and how we did discussing them tonight. So leave your comments on the video. Press the thumbs up button if you enjoyed it as well. I always really appreciate that. I want to thank our presenting partner for the show tonight, and that would be latenighter.com. Make sure to head over to that website as soon as you can to read some news about all late night television. And I want to thank Bill Kenny, Rebecca North, Law Murray, and everyone else in the chat for joining us on this Monday night. My name is John Schneider from the Saturday Night Network, and we will see you next time, everybody. Have a good one.